Dashcam footage yet?
No, they didn't send it yet.
I wouldn't be surprised if they never did.
Oh God, not you too.
New York 3 got an exclusive look at the graphic dashcam footage.
Haven't received the footage yet?
Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands!
Good morning, Larry. How are you doing, sir?
I'm all right, man. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Thanks very much for taking the call.
Sure, mate.
The first thing I wanted to ask you is, how did you actually get involved in this? Because I think you've been quite prolific. I mean, you did another film that was kind of based around filming things in confinement, or in lockdown. So,
Oh, yeah.
How did you get involved in this particular project? Because I know these two guys they worked together on a short, and then they made the #1 film in cinemas. No, by kind of a bit of black magic there.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved in this?
But I know the producer, or one of the producer types, Andrew Vandenhout, and then he called and said, "Did I want to get involved?" And he explained who Christian was, the same old story with the #1 film, which just seemed clever. I mean, that was fine. But I did like the story. I love the idea of, trying to peel away the onion layers and see what's the truth. So those are always good stories. And of course, it did seem resourceful during COVID to go out and do something. I actually was acting in quite a few things of this nature, very small little productions where you sneak off and do a bit of low budget work. So anyway, this one suited me. It was a very deep in the pandemic, and I was all alone driving out to the night shoot, and there was no cameraman in the car. It was all done with remote cameras, so it was sort of respectful of the situation, and I enjoyed it.
I mean, the script is. I mean, these themes are always very timely, but it was more timely than ever after things that had happened kind of during COVID. That must have been quite. It must have been quite a kind of a fine balance to kind of be respectful of what was going on at the same time, and kind of be careful what you touched on there. No.
Well, that's right. You never want to make a movie that's so topical that it's going to be, irrelevant in 6 months. So I think the idea of this sense of paranoia, and there's so much video recording now, and misunderstanding what you're actually watching. All those are themes that are going to continue to haunt society on both sides of the pond, I think, for a long time to come. So it seemed timely, and of course it also is sort of a throwback to 70s paranoia thrillers, as they also have in their press kit. But so I like the storyline. I like also, for my character, it's one of those things where you work one day, but you kind of haunt the movie. That's always fun, just as a conceit for an actor,
But I mean, when you approach something like that, I mean, it's like you said, you're not very much, you don't appear in it very much, you don't got very much work in there, but at the same time, everything that you do is very pivotal on the entire film, really. Especially when it comes to kind of he's there focusing on the sound, and that it's just all that scene that you've actually done yourself. So that must be quite difficult, different approach for as an actor, to kind of think, well, this is just a small scene, but at the same time, it's going to be kind of the focus of the whole film, no?
Well, yeah, although, I have this reputation of just coming in and getting killed in a movie. So I often am only in a movie for, 90 seconds or maybe 3 minutes if it's a real epic. But so I'm kind of used to that. I think the difference is, like you say, that it resonates through the story. But I was in a film called You're Next, and it was the first kill. Yeah. So that has its own resonance, even though I was in it briefly. Although my favorite part of that movie is I end up being a corpse later on. So I had to sit there while the protagonist is escaping from the bad guy, and I'm just dead on the couch.
No, it's a fantastic scene, though, with the music in the background and everything. Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah.
Oh, it's fun. There's, in other words, the old cliche, there's no small parts, only small actors. So I like trying to make an impact in an unexpected way, even in a short appearance.
Yeah, I mean, did you speak very much? I mean, I know obviously you said you weren't involved very much, but I imagine you spoke with Christian probably a lot about the idea. I know that they came from a journalism background. Was that something that they were kind of really, they wanted to, did they have kind of a chip on the shoulder maybe because they'd been journalists and they moved from journalism to filmmaking? So I imagine something there kind of, they wanted to kind of get across on the screen, no?
You know what? I wasn't aware of that until these interviews. I it was presented to me that he had made the #1 movie in America. So I just thought he was a smart young filmmaker. He was a little older than some of the kids I've worked for, but and his demeanor was confident and very measured and deliberate. So if I'd given it more thought, I might have figured out that he did have a previous life, you know, than just becoming an indie filmmaker overnight. But it's been fun to learn that about him. And to realize he has a track record making, you know, more substantial work or whatever, reality-based work, although everything's a fantasy nowadays. So yeah, that was interesting.
And then something that I really appreciated about this film was the fact that although, I mean, we've seen a lot of films where you've seen it's on the actual screen itself, you know, like Host and all these kind of films that we've seen filmed on there. I've never been so engrossed by someone kind of removing noise from an audio clip and stuff like that. The way that they managed to pull it off was just fantastic.
Well, of course, but it is a tradition. It's in Blowout, not Blow Up, but Blow Out by De Palma, and it's in the conversation to some degree. But I agree that it's fun to remind audiences of the manipulation that's going on in this medium that we all enjoy watching and just sort of take for granted. But there's so much that you can pull out of an image, even a degraded image, and the sound is so essential. So I do agree there's something nice about contemplating those aspects of the medium, you know, in a storyline.
And I think it's also, the pandemic, if there's I mean, there's always a silver lining at the end of these things now. And I guess what's come out of here is that a lot of kind of smaller filmmakers have been able to benefit from it. Now, I mean, we've seen Host, and you've been in touch with the guys from Host, and then obviously this film is coming out soon. And you, because you've got Glass Eyes Picks, I imagine you've probably been in touch with people who want to make films who kind of on this smaller scale.
I mean, I really think there's a lot of things going on. There's the equipment. There's just some really cool equipment now, and lighting equipment, and people use their cell phones to adjust the light across the room and all this stuff, which I've been noticing as I go on to little shoots. So it does mean that people can aspire to make movies and features with not a lot of money. And you hope that that will create interesting stories and a whole new wave of indie filmmakers. Now, of course, the real issue is distribution. So it comes down to this interview. It's so important and valuable that you guys take an interest in these smaller movies and put it in, you know, a major magazine or, you know, on the web, whatever. But so it's always the case that people make cool little movies. It's the distribution and the talking about it, and you hope that things catch and there's an engagement with this kind of product, because otherwise it all dies in the altar of Hollywood and the big films, which we all can enjoy, but you still need something coming from below that is got the vitality and the surprise to it.
I mean, with Glass Eye Picks, for example, how has your criteria, would you say, has your criteria changed, or the way that you kind of go about things maybe changed since confinements and lockdown?
Well, no, actually, I did the little film, which was just part of an anthology. I did that with the wife and kid, just in our house. And you know, what's interesting is that we were in post-production on a film that my son directed. And so we did all the score virtually through Zoom. And, you know, they'd have a real microphone in the room, but he'd be able to conduct and explain what he wanted to the musicians. So that was well, first of all, it was great consolation to be very engaged in an important aspect of the film virtually. And we did all the sound mix. As for production, yeah, we made a movie. You know, that's the thing. We work small anyway, so we know how to show up on a set. You've only got 12 people there. Everybody wears a mask. You can get tested, and you can create a bubble that you can't do with a big movie, or it becomes sort of a Tom Cruise drama where, you know, the secretary gets sick, and then, you know, 100 people are out of work. So Glass Eye's always been very dexterous. We're able to work in the corners, you know, and get stuff done, and you can still tell a good story with limited means, and with a big imagination.
Yeah, I'm curious that you mentioned that your son, because obviously you filmed this that segment for the film with Jack, but you also he's just directed a film, no? How pivotal have you been in this kind of this film that he's going to be bringing out soon, which sounds really fantastic. I think it's done a couple. I think it's Woodstock Film Festival just recently, no?
That's right. Thank you for knowing. Well, I produced the movie, so I always say, obviously everybody imagines the nepotism going on, and I'm whispering in his ear how to shoot the movie. Truth is he's his own man. He's got different aesthetics. He told me long ago he's not going to make horror films, which was a heartbreaking moment.
I was going to say,
I mean, what the hell? He's not even my kid, I'm telling you. But he has a sensibility all his own. Of course, we always watch movies together. I showed him every Hitchcock movie when he was 9 years old. But as a producer, I have always aspired to help first-time filmmakers, where there's still the thrill of discovering the art of film. And that's when I like to catch people, when they're still excited, they're not jaded, they're not able to think about careers yet or fame, they're just sort of thinking about the way a movie goes together. So that's when I catch them. And the fact that he's my kid is it's incidental to the fact that I saw some talent there that I'd like to capture.
So he actually chose to go into filmmaking of his own devices.
Well, as I say, there's plenty of influence. I would go out and play with him by putting on a cloak and making him do Lord of the Rings, and then started doing that to his own friends, and so it's just something he's done. Of course, the real advice from any artist is don't get into the arts. So he knows full well that
I know what you mean.
It's a difficult road, and he did get this acknowledgement at the Woodstock Film Festival, but then 2 days later, a company said they didn't want to distribute it. So it's highs and lows. That's part of it.
Circles and roundabouts. Yeah, definitely. So obviously, I want to, just before I finish, I want to talk a bit about the future. I've just recently watched Jacob's Wife, which I thought was fantastic. Another role that both you and Barbara, those were fantastic, and they're both roles. I think both of your roles were fantastic. But for me, I think it was one of Barbara's best roles since back in her heyday, for me at least. Anyway.
Yeah, I think she really took it personally. She lived with the story a long time. She developed it, and she went through a couple of writers, and she was always very protective of the essence. And I know that it meant a lot to her to express this, if you will, feminist message, whatever, just the idea of empowerment, I think, for anyone, but certainly for a woman suffering under the tiresome gaze of the husband. So she's just such a great spirit. It was really fun to watch her and to watch her produce. I think she has dabbled in producing, but never something she cared enough about. And she would tussle with the director over casting and every detail. So it was just wonderful to be there in support of her blossoming. And I think people have really appreciated it.
And you said she was very hands-on. Did she actually handpick you to play her husband in the film, or was that more Travis's side of things?
To be honest, I think you could say that, yes, she did. She had been in touch with me 4 years earlier and said, I'd love you to play this part. Then, didn't hear from her for a while. And then I did hear from her, and she was like, well, we're looking around. I think they were, one investor probably said, can you get somebody who's actually famous or, has a name? And then I don't think that worked out, because then, 8 months later, she calls and like, we always wanted you. Well, such is showbiz. You can't take it personally. It's all right.
Oh, but it works out perfect. It works out brilliantly. And I loved it. It's a great film.
Yeah.
So I just want to finish off then. There's one film that I was really interested, that I was reading about, that you've got coming out soon. Well, there's two actually. The Summoners and Dorothy. I think they're both horror themed movies, no?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little about those two?
They're both witch movies, or maybe I'm giving it away, but it is ironic. And as usual, I come to a project very often through back channels or whatever. Someone makes an introduction, and the pitch is that we only need you 3 days, or you haven't played this kind of role yet, we want you to clean up, or whatever, or we want you to turn into a demon. Sometimes that's a draw. So, yeah, I happened to do 2 films in a row, very, very micro budget. Once again, there's a little nod to COVID, everybody with a mask, but then you just get down to it. And I look forward to both of them. They're interesting directors, and I like working with people as they start out and find their way.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, Larry. I wish you the best of luck with this film when it comes out, and with all of these witchcraft projects that you've got coming out soon. And I look forward to seeing Jack's film, because I've not seen Jack's film either. So I look forward to seeing that one as well.
Fantastic, man. I hope that day comes. Well, thank you, Howard.
All right. Take care. All the very best. Nice to speak to you, Larry. Cheers,
Ciao.
then.
You may have just inadvertently received some highly classified information in your inbox. Seen that email?
No.
It caused all sorts of problems. Problems for you.
Gotta get the fuck out. Where'd you dump the document?